All right, I think I should move on to what you actually wanted me here for, huh?
Thank you.
No problem, thank you. All right, so moving forward, with the budget, it's actually very similar to last year that we had there, student activities for athletics. Dues and fees, just like everything else, everything's just been increasing. Amount of officials we've needed increases, especially as we go further along in some of our sports. So the further you get, you actually add an official usually to what's going on in the championship type games where you have playoffs and so on and so forth. But then you're also increasing, obviously, the people you need to work dates, people you need to work this and that, and so on and so forth. Not to mention the MPA and the SMAA keeps increasing our fees. So every time I turn around, it seems to be something else gets added. So in the whole first part, you'll see there, you'll have officials, game coverage, rescue police, SMAA league dues, MPA fees, league minder, which actually we're using a different program now, but it's still a program, and conferences. So attending different conferences for coaches and stuff like that. We're at 65.5, we were at 65,000 last year, so it's an increase of $500, sorry. Yes?
Claire, sorry, no. Do we have a copy of that?
Since it's on the Google Doc.
Do you have a, did you?
Is it in your?
Oh, it's
there.
right.
Okay.
You're looking at big
Sorry.
package.
Sorry.
Small. Yeah.
It's within Joe's, yeah.
Okay.
All right, yeah.
it's just tiny.
Halfway down page 4.
It's just tiny, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
It was a font cut, not a
I have the one for usually here.
Budget
The second portion of that budget, as you're looking, is supplies, uniforms and equipment. We have a rotation which we'll go to, I can show you after at the bottom of this actually, where we're trying to catch up on some of the uniforms and equipment that have been neglected for many years, I should say. So we're actually starting to catch up, and we have a uniform rotation now that seems to be working pretty well. There's still a couple hiccups in it, but we're working on getting them straightened out. Medical training supplies, awards, rule books, CPR classes, golf cart maintenance. I'm gonna keep stringing those things together as long as I can, honestly. So, it just, you need, brakes this year, you need batteries this year. It's just little things here and there that keep adding up, but it's still cheaper than buying another golf cart. So, we've been getting those to duct tape along and keep going at this point. So that's up $500 actually. So, the first item we showed was up $5, this one's up $500. And reconditioning is at the $10,000 mark, which is exactly where it was last year. Reconditioning obviously goes towards the football equipment, so shoulder pads, helmets, so on and so forth with that type of stuff. In addition to that, we are now certifying our lacrosse helmets because I was not comfortable giving a helmet that wasn't certified to a kid. In addition to certifying them, I only have about 18 of them total right now. So I have to purchase a few more for this season even, and next season I have to purchase some more. Just we're trying to do 5 or so a season so that I can keep up, or a year so I can keep up on that. Yes, sir.
So we're sending the lacrosse helmets out?
I actually sent them out for NOCSA approval. Yep. So I bought some new ones last year, and as soon as they're worn, I'm just following the football model where you just send them right out again. My rationale with that is a $35 reconditioning charge is a lot cheaper than the lawsuit we're going to get when somebody gets hurt in this thing. So. Essentially, it's just there is no, the mandate is 3 years, I think is what they're saying in it, but if you ever watch a male lacrosse game, they're hitting just as much as a hockey player is, so that's crazy in my opinion. Which leads me to my next point, we actually don't provide hockey helmets. And I don't even know what they're wearing, those kids. I understand that half of them are Wells and half of them are us, but I don't even know what they're wearing as far as a helmet. I'd like to start purchasing some helmets and start making sure that they're in the rotation for NOCSA approval as well. I think that's the next the issue that we might end up with.
Are those in there?
I have expectation to buy 5 or so next year in this budget, yeah. Within that $10,000 that I do. My reconditioning bill for football, it will be somewhere around $6,000, give or take, by the time I'm done. And then the remainder of that will go towards the rest of the purchasing helmets for lacrosse as well as ice hockey, and then purchasing reconditioning helmets that we have as well in those sports. I'm still not providing shoulder pads for lacrosse, any other equipment for hockey really. They're pretty self-sufficient as far as everything else they get. Goalie stuff for the both lacrosse programs, I provide all that, but in a uniform, and that's pretty much all I provide them. They bring their own sticks and everything else.
I don't think many teams are providing shoulder pads anyway.
No, they're not. The kids like their own, and there's no real. The only reconditioning to a shoulder pad is they dip them to disinfect them. It's not like they're going through and check it, or they might check the straps, but it's not like it's a safety issue necessarily. So there's no reason for us to spend money on that. We do it for football because they just stink We just set it out, let them dip them and get them taken care of. I tried the Lysol trick, it did not do the trick at all, so,
Hockey equipment's worse.
hockey equipment is worse. Hockey, yeah,
Okay, terms
that's a true statement.
far behind, they're not
So-
far behind.
Yeah, lacrosse is not far behind, that's true, but I think they take pride in it, I think that's part of what it is.
Do you provide recommendations to hockey parents about the helmet issues? Because parents really need to know.
Yeah, we have this issue in football honestly as well. If parents wanna go out and they wanna buy a helmet because they saw somewhere this is the best helmet necessarily. And then I've had conversations with reconditioners and with helmet, manufacturers and suppliers, and I've even seen the Knockstar test that they have, where some of the testing, the parent will tell me, oh, it's the best helmet during the test. It's a flawed test. I mean, anybody that's done research and can look at it, it's a straight shot test, and most of the concussions you see are a spiraling effect concussion, which means you don't even have to hit anybody. You just turn your head real fast and you get jarred around, you can get a concussion. So it has very little to do, well, it has something to do with the impact. Skull fractures have gone down quite consistently because of helmet manufacturers. Concussions, we're on a rise. Two reasons why. We're recognizing them more. We're actually somewhat over-recognizing them. If a kid he claims he has a headache, he's got a concussion until we clear him at this point. We're on the safe side to make sure they don't get hurt. But in addition to that, the kids are hitting different than they used to. We were taught to hit differently than well, it's getting better. Coaches are teaching them how to hit again, but we were taught not to use your head when you hit. And that's what you see a helmet now. Their helmets are all scarred up. It's like a battle scar or some kind that they're proud of. So it's one of those things where you're going to see changes, and I have an issue with parents that read stuff that salesmen are trying to sell them, and they buy a helmet that's 8 ounces heavier than the helmet that we're providing that get the same star rating. And I'm like, all right, now this kid's neck's got to carry half a pound more than it would have to otherwise. And there's certain helmets we go through that my manufacturers try to sell me, and I said, that helmet's too heavy. Well, all the pros are wearing it. Yeah, well, look at some of the pros, and look at some of the kids that I have out there. They can't pick their head up. They're going to be falling on the floor the whole time trying to play football. So it's one of those things where it's a preference type thing. And we've had a couple issues with parents that wanted to have their kids have their own helmet. We made special accommodations this year. That was fine. They had to give it to me. I send it out for NOCSA approval, come back to me, and then I hand it to the kid. And they were like, that's ridiculous. It was just NOCSA approved. They said, but for all I know, the kid was outside banging nails at a board with it. I have no idea what was happening with that helmet. From the time it touches our hands and we provide it to the kid, I wanted to make sure that it was approved.
Yeah, we can't let it out of our hands. Here, now you can take it back, see it at the start of the season.
Yeah.
Even though it's their personal helmet, if they're gonna use it in our sport, we have to be able to certify that that helmet was approved.
Right.
It's
Which is-
not altered or not impacted
Yeah.
outside of our control.
The second side to that study is most of those helmets were tested without a face mask on, and the structural integrity of a helmet has a lot to do with the face mask. Because you can take some of those helmets and fold them right on top of each other without a face mask on it. So if you're testing a helmet with a side shot, of course it's gonna fail miserably in an impact test. The study's actually quite interesting. It's long, but I'm kind of a geek like that. I like to go through studies and pick them apart and see what's happening with what, like what they actually did for the test. So that was what Mr. Conley just said is actually part of my concern with hockey. I don't know what those kids are wearing.
Right, so can we provide it, we can't provide them all the helmets right now, but can we provide them with some guidance about
We
getting
can.
it tested?
Yeah, there's no reason why we can't tell them, well, one thing I'd like to actually have a check on their helmet and just see the age of it, because most helmets are dated via serial number or some way, shape, or form anyway. So if it's more than 3 years old, I think we should at least require that they send it out to NOCSA, and then give it to me and I'll get it NOCSA tested at least. And at least we know it passed some sort of inspection. So that way, instead of buying an $80, $90, $100, $200 helmet, depending on what helmet you're buying there, we're paying, I think a hockey helmet's like $25 to get it NOCSA approved. But that, of course, is going to affect my bottom line at some point. We're going to have to go in for a reconditioning bill at some point when we do that. I'm not there yet, but I think in another year you're going to see that happen. So my first plan, to purchase 5 or so helmets. And that way, we have some kids that are, hockey's an expensive sport. I can provide them with a safe helmet. I don't have to worry about what they're in right now. The first part. You'll see at the bottom side here, deleted one coaching stipend. So Mr. Finley said earlier that there was some cuts in the athletic budget. What we had started last year was a summer conditioning coach to try to provide an avenue for some kids when there was an actual organized sport going on, that they can come and just do general conditioning with Mr. Lawrence. Actually, we had him doing it. So We had some pretty good numbers come out there for a while. I think he had 18 or 19 at one point. It dwindled down as the summer went on a little bit, as you would expect. You know, summer starts to catch up with kids a little bit. And I think when he ended up, I think he had 8 or so that were consistent, and some stragglers that would come here and there to show up to that actual summer conditioning thing. Last year, I paid that out of a intramural stipend that we had a little bit of intramural money left over. And for this year, we tried to put it in a budget so we can actually have it more consistent, and that was one of the things that we had to cut. So that is no longer in that budget. It's one of the things we took out there. And the last part you'll see here is the bottom section here. Uniform rotation as of 12/1/2014. Ice hockey and cheering, you see, I have it self-supported. That's actually, I'm trying to change that a little bit. I was just talking about the ice hockey helmets and cheering. You'll see here, I actually have it on my uniform rotation list. We were looking at uniforms this year for them. Believe it or not, cheering uniforms like $250. Believe it or not. So it's one of those things where I talked to our coach. We didn't have enough time. They're all custom, and that's part of the reason why they're so expensive. We didn't have enough time to get them done, and we had concerns because you only buy so many of them, and if they don't fit the individuals that you think they're going to fit to, then you're kind of out of luck with what you're doing with that uniform. It can be altered to an extent, but not too much. So I ended on this list right here. It's not going to get done this year, but it's something I'm probably going to look into for next year. So we're actually providing that to them. I figure it's partly a Title IX thing. I probably should be providing their uniform, to be perfectly honest. Two, we really don't give much money to cheering. We pay for their busing and their competition entry fees, and that's pretty much it. They pretty much fundraise for everything else they do. We didn't even buy their mats. Their mats they own. They bought through fundraising. So you'll see girls lacrosse to be determined. At this point, we got slick. When we bought the field hockey uniforms for this fall, they're also lacrosse uniforms for girls. I did that because I wasn't sure I was going to have enough money in the budget to cover another set of uniforms. So for this year, I think I'm going to use the girls' field hockey uniforms and then move this over to my budget for next year to get the girls' lacrosse uniforms. I don't want to use the same one forever because they're not going to last as long, number one. Number two, that could be considered a Title IX issue at some point if I'm not careful with that. So for this year, I think it's going to be fine. We were already sharing skirts or kilts, whatever you want to call them. So we were already sharing those anyway, mainly because the field hockey girls didn't like the plaid. They wanted to go with the same ones that the lacrosse girls were wearing. So wrestling uniforms, we actually offered to buy wrestling uniforms to Mr. Duvall. He said he doesn't want them yet as of this year, so we looked into them getting him warm-ups instead. And the time frame just did not work out. So we elected to move that on to future time if we had to. He provides a lot of he buys 5 or 6 sets of singlets at a time when he buys them through boosters. So he felt like, don't bother buying me that. Once you put that money that you're going to buy on a singlet, which is about $75, $80, put it towards the warm-ups. And he's great with those warm-ups are 5, 6 years old, and he gets them back after every time that he uses them. And he washes them, or he has his student trainers wash them, and they're in great condition, honestly. So I said I have no problem with that, knowing how well he takes care of his equipment. There's no problem with that at all. So we're going to talk about that actually towards the end of this year, see what we're at budget-wise, and maybe order them so we have them for the future year. Boys soccer's already been purchased, girls soccer's been purchased, and as I said before, field hockey's been purchased for this year. You had baseball, boys basketball, softball, boys lacrosse, cross country, and football. So actually what you don't see on that list is girls basketball. The reason why boys basketball was actually purchased, they did it through boosters without me knowing it first. And I said, that's fine, now you're going to the bottom of the rotation, just know that. The issue that I had with that is I was trying to keep the basketballs together. So when I did the boys basketball, I could do the girls basketball. Well, they kind of messed up the rotation a little bit. So I'm going to have to move probably girls basketball for next year. Now that we have a new coach, he can have some say in as to what the uniform's going to look like, and we'll move from there. I think that's far down. Well, I have boys track, girls track, and the last time girls basketball was purchased was 2011, 2010, 2011. So 5 years is good, pretty good run on uniform, honestly. I took a long time, didn't I?
We were thinking about that.
One question.
Listen, I'll come here often, but I talk when I'm here.
What's the status of the pole vault pits?
Okay, pole pits are brand new as of last year.
Okay.
So we were able to purchase those to try to update. High jump pits not so much, but the pole pits are brand new. Steve and I can have this talk, he doesn't know it, because I want to put it indoor.
Is this the mats?
I want to sink, what's that?
Is this the mats?
Yeah,
Okay.
not the ones under the bleachers, those are Portland's old mats that we're discarding.
Those are
Yeah,
Portland
those are
mats.
garbage, yeah. The ones that we have in the storage container are all nice and wrapped up. But we're gonna have this conversation, because I actually wanna cut and you're not gonna like this, but in the gym floor, a sunken pit, so we can actually do indoor pole vault feature.
You're right.
Or just turn your head, and I'll do
We'll
it.
talk later. We'll talk.
I have a saw, don't worry, I travel.
That's good, I support that.
Yeah.
That's great.
What do you do for, yeah?
I have a similar question.
Yeah,
So I noticed.
here we go, it's coming.
The cage.
I know where he's going, go ahead.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
But
So-
there's no mats for it.
Right, so that's what I'm gonna ask about. So, I noticed that the cage is actually.
Before you say any more, I do have mats for it.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right,
I knew where you're going with this, though.
okay.
Yeah.
We
And
just talked about
what's,
this the other day, on the way up to the hockey game.
Idiot.
so I guess the question then becomes, is there going to be a policy put in place by the athletic department about, non-high school use?
At this time, I'm not excited about it, to be honest. And Steve and I have talked about that quite a bit. Here's the reason why. It's a $7,000 cage. And although people tell me all the time, and this is no reflection on you whatsoever,
No, I don't.
but people use our facility all the time, and it's usually me cleaning up after them when they get back in the next day. And it gets trashed inadvertently. It's not trashed on purpose, but for example, our own basketball coaches were doing the Saturday, Sunday basketball things with the youth programs, and it took the next Monday, I come into the building, and it looked like the Nebraska Dust Bowl, is the best way I can explain it, because of the fact that they use sand and salt to salt out when it snows, and thousands of people are tracking that into the building. So the whole next day, you see me, who, I'm getting a little chubbier, so it's not a bad thing, but I'm walking behind the washing machine, I don't know what else you call it, you know, the basketball Zamboni, how's that? So I'm walking behind that, cleaning the floor, and you have to do it 3 or 4 times to get all the dirt off the floor, so I'm ready for a basketball game. So that's just one example how stuff gets trashed. The other issue we have is like, they put the basketball nets up, they don't realize that if you don't stop in time, it bird nests the cable, and then I'm up in there in one of my 6,000 shirts that I ruined already this year, trying to get the cable out, getting grease all over me, so I can get the basketball hoop back down again, you know, stuff like that. In fact, you guys weren't even aware of this, but somebody put up the basketball hoop and Mr. DeVoe was standing under it, and the pulley snapped, and it fell right behind him, right here. Pulley about that big, solid steel pulley. Almost killed him, actually, when we were setting up for a wrestling tournament. The bleachers, somebody decided to try to take the bleachers out, and these controllers are all in my office, mind you, so they have to get in my office to get it somehow. But they neglected to put there's a metal cover that connects one set of bleachers to the other so you don't fall between them. Well, they left those down when they were putting the bleachers in, and it bent the whole section of bleachers. So we had to have Hussey come out and straighten out the bleachers. So it's just little things that I want to give it a year where my baseball team gets to use it, and they're really excited about it, and it's great, and then I can say like, all right, now we have all the kinks worked out of it, and let's see if we can then utilize it for the rest of the public. But on the next note, I am still not allowing use of the varsity fields for baseball or softball or stadium for outside entities, other than the varsity teams.
So that's no different than any of the high schools.
It's no different than in the high schools, but at our high school in previous years, people had been doing that, so that's not gonna happen. As of last year, we stopped that pretty much. And why? Because you put $13,000 just into the baseball field out of Kevin's budget in recent years.
Just in the, what is that stuff, the clay, combo?
Turfus.
Turfus.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then somebody came and took it out.
true,
Yeah.
Right.
true. Tired of hearing about me yet? We good?
Good job.
I thought I was done
Nice
seeing
job.
you for the winter, but.
You are not.
Okay.
You are not. In fact, we get to go to a football meeting next week, actually. I've already been invited to Campbell Conference.
I'm driving.
You driving?